Everyone, welcome to episode 3 of the Welcome to Midlife podcast. I'm your menopausal bestie, Jessie Kate. We are talking today all about sleep. It is the most important part of a woman's well-being is a good night of sleep. Yet more than 60% of women report struggling with sleep once they get into their menopausal era. With 60% of us struggling for sleep, it's no wonder this is a hot button topic on all things menopause. The research suggests that this is actually the core issue of menopause, and not sleeping well exacerbates all others. So with this being the most important part of our menopausal toolkit, sleep matters more than anything else for our ability to feel good in our body and mind. When we don't sleep well, it affects everything from our mood to our weight, to our body aches and pains, to our temperature, to our cognitive function. Everything gets impaired when we do not sleep well. There's 3 arenas in which our sleep gets affected in menopause. 1 is difficulty going to sleep. 2 is going to sleep but waking up. And 3 is waking up early. In this conversation today, we are going to talk about 4 strategies for improving our sleep during menopause. So let's get into it. Before we dive in to cover the 4 strategies that are going to help us sleep our best in our menopausal era, let's first understand the 4 different stages of sleep. As we go to bed every evening, we enter into the first state of sleep, which is light sleep. During this state, all arousal in the brain begins to slow down, and all muscular movement in the body also begins to slow down. Then we enter into a deeper state of sleep, or stage 2. During this stage, we're going to see our heart rate slow down. We're also going to see our temperature decline. Then we move into the deepest state of sleep, or state 3. This is where energy restoration takes place. And then the 4th stage, commonly called REM stage, or rapid eye movement stage, is where there's arousal activity in the brain, and this is where we would have dreams. These 4 cycles repeat every 90 to 120 minutes throughout the evening, and science suggests that we need somewhere around 7 hours of sleep to be able to get enough rest and repair and recovery in our bodies and minds. As we're sleeping, any point in time throughout these stages, we're going to have a disruption in sleep, especially if we're experiencing a change in our core temperature or experiencing the joys of night sweats. When we have disrupted sleep, the side effects ripple out and affect us across many, many arenas of ourselves. You're going to recognize many of these side effects as also some of the known symptoms of your menopause. Side effects from a poor night's sleep include compromised cognition, hello brain fog, amplified mood swings, welcome your rage, increased stress and inability to be able to handle the day's natural comings and goings, disruptions in your appetite, hello weight gain, and stalled recovery, aches and pains, and an inability to recover from injury or wounds also gets impaired. These are disruptive side effects. So as you can see, sleeping well is going to help us across not just feeling rested and energized, but across many facets of our body and mind. The 4 strategies that can help us sleep well in midlife. Welcome to my sleep oasis. There are 4 main strategies that can help us as we learn to try to prioritize and get better night's sleep during our midlife journey. The first is to create bedtime rituals. We're going to break this down in a moment. The second is to practice what's called good sleep hygiene. The third is to optimize our sleep environment. And then the 4th is to practice breathing exercises when we do happen to wake up and need support to get ourselves back to sleep. So let's break down what a bedtime ritual would be. A ritual in the bedtime category would be steps that are going to cue your body and mind that it's time to wind down. This is something we're going to look to try to do repetitively so that our body builds an awareness and our mind has an awareness that when these things start to occur, it knows that it's time to wind down for sleep. One thing that we can do in the category of a bedtime ritual is to set the same time we go to sleep every single evening, even on the weekends. You want to think to allow yourself a buffer of about 30 minutes for this sleep time. And ideally, you'd like this sleep time to be before midnight. Keep in mind that you're human and you're going to have experiences that might call for a different night's sleep time. But on average, you want yourself to be targeting to go to sleep at the exact same time every single evening. With this suggestion, also then you want to be waking at the exact same time every day within a 30-minute buffer of time. This is going to allow our body to be able to get an understanding internally that there is a rhythm. One of the big factors of why sleep comes so difficult to us in midlife is because of the short circuiting that starts to happen in our brain as our estrogen begins to fluctuate, decline, and ultimately leave our bodies. This estrogen, we know, has some massive properties of protection for our body, but we also are learning and discovering how much it actually does for our brain. As our estrogen starts to change, fluctuate, decline, and leave our bodies, it affects our brain. One of the big things that we see in terms of sleep is it affects the ability to communicate effectively with some really important neurotransmitters. This is going to affect our body's ability to send and receive messages that help with our circadian rhythms. So as our body's struggling to get the right messages, because our brain is short-circuiting, as best as we can support ourselves with targeting the same wake and sleep times, the better off we'll be to help support our body and mind as it's having difficulty getting the right messages for sleep and wake cycles. In this bedtime ritual category, I also like to include the following suggestion. Since our body is having difficulty focusing its messages back and forth for the right secretion of our hormones for sleep, if we can take our time every day and go outside first thing in the morning and aim to get 5 to 10 minutes of direct morning light in our eyes, it's going to do wonders for supporting your circadian rhythms. Remember, your brain is having difficulty during this time signaling the right hormonal release for our sleep and wake cycles. And as we focus on making ourselves really ritualistic in our wake and sleep times, if we can also focus on supporting the body by getting the sunlight first thing in the morning, it's going to do wonders for strengthening our body's ability and our mind's ability to get the right hormonal messages. So 5 to 10 minutes of direct sunlight in your eyes every morning is also going to help the fact that your body's struggling to communicate with some of its neurotransmitters, like serotonin, like melatonin. And this would be super helpful as you support yourself for sleep. The final thing to talk about in the bedtime ritual category is something that we'll call relaxation practices. Thinking of having a 30 to 60 minute window of time as you wind down for sleep, where you're going to perform relaxation practices. Every person is different, so really it's finding something that you would really enjoy doing during your relaxation time. This is something other than watching TV and scrolling on your phone. So maybe things like journaling if you like to write, reading if you enjoy reading, taking a bath, going for a really gentle evening walk around the neighborhood, meditating, stretching, things along those lines. But you yourself are your own individual. So ask yourself, what would I really enjoy doing during my relaxation wind down time before bed? If reading is something that you enjoy, and you do like to read on a device like a Kindle or an e-reader, make sure you set the setting to reduce blue light. And if your device doesn't have that setting, then make sure that you read it with a pair of blue light blocking glasses to help with the disruption of the sleep signals coming from your screen to your eyes. Now we're going to talk about sleep hygiene. This is basically talking about habits and practices that are going to coincide with getting a good night's sleep, things to really help support us. One of the things to consider as a sleep hygiene practice is to try to think about giving yourself some curfews with some things that you consume throughout the day. One of those things that many of us love to consume is caffeine, but during this time in our life, it can really disrupt the messaging to our brain that prepares our body for sleep. So think about limiting caffeine to 2 p.m. It takes the body on average about 5 hours to metabolize the effects of caffeine. So of course you can adjust that based on your own sleep time that you set in your ritual practice, but try to limit caffeine intake no caffeine past 2 p.m. Also think about having a curfew for alcohol, stopping any consumption of it 3 hours before your bedtime. Keeping in mind that you are human and there are going to be some situations where you're out having a good time later on in the evening and you can't help but have a beverage later on before you go to bed. So give yourself some grace here, but as best you can. Caffeine and alcohol are big disruptors to the neurotransmitters that send our body messages for sleep. Not to mention consuming them close to bedtime, they will metabolize in the body while we are asleep, and they will be what wakes us up. And if you're someone that is experiencing a lot of hot flashes and night sweat, caffeine and alcohol contribute to an increase in those two symptoms, which will definitely disrupt your sleep. Things you want to do is limit phone time in your sleep hygiene, limit screen time in general. Think of a curfew of 1 hour before bed as best you can. You're also going to want to think of dimming your light as a good sleep hygiene practice throughout your entire house, also 1 hour before bed. We do all these things when we are trying to get a good night's sleep because all of these things send messages through our central nervous system, which helps support our body's ability to wind down more naturally. Taking time to dim the lights in the house, taking time to get off our device is going to be crucial because it's helping for the eyes to relax so that the brain can receive the message from the nervous system that things are happening in the environment that are evening practices, that are wind down, that are preparing us for sleep. You also want to think about being extremely routine with your body and your practices these days, because this is really going to help support your circadian rhythm. So another thing in the sleep hygiene category would be to think about making sure that you exercise and eat at routine times every day. This is going to really help support your body and your brain so that it's getting the right messages to know how to flow through a day with your hormones, considering right now that your hormones are a bit of a mess. So to recap, before we move on to the last two, you're looking to have bedtime rituals that help to be steps that you take to signal to your body and mind that it's time to wind down. Sleep hygiene practices are habits and practices that coincide with getting a good night's sleep. Third strategy is to optimize your sleep environment. Think about your bed as being for sleeping and sexing only. So if you're someone who loves to watch TV in your bed, you might want to consider that that could be contributing to your body getting the incorrect messages about what happens when we're in bed. This can be something that can keep those of us that have difficulty falling asleep. This can be something that exacerbates it. If we make a conscious choice to optimize our sleep environment, that it is an oasis, that we only sleep in this bed and have sex in this bed, then our body's going to have more of an appropriate message when we do get into the bed that it is time to sleep, not to stay up for hours and binge Netflix. Also, in the category of optimizing your sleep environment, you want your room to be dark as possible. If you have a partner in the space that likes night lights, you might consider getting a sleep mask to help support keeping the room as dark as possible. This is for your central nervous system as well, so that the messages to the brain can be that of sleep. In addition to keeping the room dark, you also want the room as quiet as possible, as comfortable as possible, and as cold as possible. These are all things that are going to help support you. Your body goes through the sleep stages every 90 to 120 minutes throughout the evening. During some of these stages, it's really imperative that we stay asleep during them because crucial things happen during these stages. We have a stage where our heart rate is slowing and our body temperature is dropping in stage 2 of our evening sleep cycle. If we keep our room as cool as possible, it's going to really help support the fact that some of us run hot these days, and that can cause night sweats for a big disruptor of our sleep. So if we keep the room as cold as possible, as we can comfortably handle, then it's going to support the environment of helping the sleep cycles that are naturally occurring, helping to combat some of the things that might exacerbate our symptoms. You want your bed to be a place of joy. You want it to be comfortable. You want the environment in your bed to be as comfortable as possible. The linens that you choose, comfortable. It might be time to invest in a new mattress, making sure that your environment for sleep is as optimal as you can possibly have it. When I was in my early 20s, my now husband and I slept on a futon bed, and this futon bed was on a metal frame, and it had a mattress about that thick, and it was not supportive whatsoever. But I never complained, never felt an ache or a pain, as is the joy of being in a body in your 20s. Now in my 40s, I need the most optimal mattress environment to support my aches and pains, to support my body so that it sleeps. What we used to be able to do in our 20s and 30s, we can no longer do in our 40s, 50s, and beyond. So looking to optimize some things that maybe weren't a factor in your decision making at all, but now as you struggle with sleep, you're discovering that it might be time to think about switching some things so that it is optimal to support you in your sleep. When we think about optimizing our sleep environment, we also want to plan for disruption. So if you are someone that goes to the bathroom a lot during the evening now, because your estrogen is changing and declining, and it is affecting your bladder and your body's ability to stay asleep without having to wake up to go to the bathroom, you might want to consider eliminating any liquids at least an hour and a half before bedtime to try to optimize that ability to stay asleep and not have to pee all the time. Other things to think about in optimizing your sleep environment and preparing for disruption is, if you're someone that gets a lot of night sweats, you might have an extra set of jammies or an extra set of clothing right by your bedside, so that if it does wake you up, you can quickly transition and try to get to sleep, back to sleep as quickly as possible. Also, if you're someone that does run hot and is experiencing those hot flashes, and it's really common for you to have that thermometer leg that you constantly stick in and out of the sheets, you might want to think about having a cooling device nearby. I keep a fan right there on the floor next to my bed, so if I have a moment where I wake up and I'm running hotter than normal, I can kick that fan on and help soothe me back to sleep more quickly than if it wasn't there. So thinking about some things that might be supportive to plan for the occasional disruption, because none of these strategies are going to eliminate our sleep disruptions, but they are going to help support us more often than not and optimize our sleep environment so we can get the best, most reparative sleep that we possibly can right now during a time of chaos in our bodies. And the fourth strategy for sleep is to help us when we do have a sleep disruption. And this is to utilize breathing practices to help us get back to sleep. The following breathing practice that I'm going to tell you about is a simple one. We breathe in for 4 seconds through our nose. Then we hold our breath at the top for 7 seconds. Then we slowly breathe out from our mouth for 8 seconds. This breathing practice is helpful for when we wake up in the middle of the night and we have difficulty going back to sleep. This is a breathing practice that the segment of the breath, breaking it up with different durations for inhale and exhale, help to settle the nervous system back into a more calm state. Oftentimes, what disrupts us or wakes us up is a change to body temperature or heart rate. This breathing practice with the 4, 7, and 8 breath is going to help regulate and slow down any disruption that is in that arena of heart rate variability, which will allow us to be able to help to regulate the core body temperature a little bit more effectively. So it's a powerful practice for our central nervous system. It's going to help soothe the mind. Sometimes our disruptions aren't in our body at all. Sometimes they are in our mind. We experience a lot more anxiety and depression during this time in our life, and it can be a big contributor to disrupting our sleep. So too can our hot flashes and night sweats and waking up to go to the bathroom and a host of other things. This breathing practice can be a helpful tool as a strategy to help get you back to sleep when sleep has been disrupted. I hope these strategies have been helpful for you. I am appreciative of you listening and following along, and I'm here for you if you need anything. Don't ever hesitate to reach out. A link down below in the comments is how you can find me should you need any additional coaching or support. I'm your menopausal bestie, and it would be my honor to support you. Till the next episode, thanks for watching.